Hi, friends. It's Deanna Williston from Our Blooming Catholic Life, and I'm here today again with a little bit of help if you've been doing the new St. Thomas Institute's Bible in a Year reading plan with Dr. Taylor Marshall. I know a lot of us ladies have so much going on in the Christmas season. You've got baking, wrapping, shopping, hosting, all the holiday goodies going on, but you want to finish reading the Bible in a year, and you've done such a great job up till now, ladies, right? And you want to be able to finish strong, but you're running around like a chicken with your head cut off. So whether you would like to be able to listen to the readings while you're doing those things, or you would just like to sit still for a minute, kind of shut down and just focus on the Word of God, that's why I'm doing this. I'm doing it just to help you finish strong in the Bible of a Year reading plan by doing the readings out loud for you. You can watch, listen, whatever you need to do. So today, this is filming for Sunday, December 18th, where we were supposed to read first Machabees 3 and 4, Sirach 38. Sirach is also known as Ecclesiasticus, and Revelation / the Apocalypse of St. John the Apostle, chapter 9. Remember, different Bible translations use different names for these books, but they are all the same readings. I've checked them. You're good. And I'm just going to jump in now. First, Maccabees 3 to 4. Then his son Judas, called Maccabeus, rose up in his stead, and all his brethren helped him, and all that they had joined themselves to his father, and they fought with the cheerfulness the battle of Israel. Sorry, friends, I love that line. And all his brethren helped him, and all they that had joined themselves to his father, and they fought with cheerfulness the battle of Israel. And he got his people great honor, and put on a breastplate as a giant, and girt his warlike armor about him in battles, and protected the camp with his sword. In his acts he was like a lion, like a lion's whelp roaring for his prey. And he pursued the wicked and sought them out, and them that troubled his people he burnt with fire. And his enemies were driven away for fear of him, and all the workers of iniquity were troubled, and salvation prospered in his hand. And he grieved many kings, and made Jacob glad with his works, and his memory is blessed forever. And he went through the cities of Judah, and destroyed the wicked out of them, and turned away wrath from Israel. And he was renowned even to the utmost part of the earth, and he gathered them that were perishing. And Apollonius gathered together the Gentiles and a numerous and great army from Samaria to make war against Israel. And Judas understood it, and went forth to meet them, and he overthrew them and killed him. And many fell down slain, the rest fled away. And he took their spoils, and Judas took the sword of Apollonius, and fought with it all his lifetime. And Sirach, captain of the army of Syria, heard that Judas had assembled a company of the faithful and a congregation with him. And he said, I will get me a name, and I will be glorified in the kingdom, and will overthrow Judas and those that are with him, that have despised the edict of the king. And he made himself ready, and the host of the wicked went up with him, strong succors, to be revenged of the children of Israel. And they approached even as far of Beth-horon, and Judas went forth to meet with them with a small company. But when they saw the army coming to meet them, they said to Judas, How shall we, being few, be able to fight against so great a multitude and so strong? And we are ready to faint with fasting today. And Judas said, It is an easy matter for many to be shut up in the hands of a few, and there is no difference in the sight of God of heaven to deliver with a great multitude or with a small company. For the success of war is not in the multitude of the army, but strength cometh from heaven. They come against us with an insolent multitude, and with pride to destroy us, and our wives, and our children, and to take our spoils. But we will fight for our lives and our laws, and the Lord himself will overthrow them before our face. But as for you, fear them not. As soon as he has made an end of speaking, he rushed suddenly upon them, and Sirach and his host were overthrown before him. And he pursued him by the descent of Beth-horon even to the plain, and there fell of them 800 men, and the rest fled into the land of the Philistines. And the fear of Judas and of his brethren and of the dread of them fell upon all the nations round about them. And his fame came to the king and all nations told of the battles of Judas. Now when the king Antiochus heard these words, he was angry in his mind, and he sent and gathered the forces of all his kingdom, an exceeding strong army. And he opened his treasury and gave out pay to the army for a year, and he commanded them that they should be ready for all things. And he perceived that the money of his treasures failed, and that the tributes of the country were small because of this dissension and the evil that he had brought upon the land, that he might take away the laws of old times. And he feared that he should not have as formerly enough for charges and gifts which he had given before with a liberal hand, for he had abounded more than the kings that had been before him. And he was greatly perplexed in mind, and proposed to go into Persia, and to take tributes of the countries, and to gather much money. And he left Lysias, a noble of blood royal, to oversee the affairs of the kingdom from the river Euphrates even to the river of Egypt, and to bring up his son Antiochus till he come again. And he delivered to him half the army and the elephants, and he gave him charge concerning all that he would have done, and concerning the inhabitants of Judea and Jerusalem, and that he should send an army against them to destroy and root out the strength of Israel and the remnant of Jerusalem, and to take away the memory of them from that place, and that he should settle strangers to dwell in their coasts, and divide their land by lot. So the king took half the army that remained, and he went forth from Antioch, the chief city of his kingdom, in the 147th year, and he passed over the river Euphrates, and went through the higher countries. Then Lysias chose Ptolemy, the son of Douay-Rheims, and Nicanor, and Gorgias, mighty men of the king's friends, and he sent them with them 40,000 men and 7,000 horsemen to go into the land of Judah, and to destroy it according to the king's orders. So they went forth with all their power, and came and pitched near Emmaus in the plain country. And the merchants of the countries heard the fame of them, and they took silver and gold in abundance, and servants, and they came to the camp to buy the children of Israel for slaves. And there were joined to them the forces of Syria and the land of the strangers. And Judas and his brethren saw that the evils were multiplied, and that the armies approached to their borders, and they knew the orders of the king had given to destroy the people and utterly abolish them. And they said every man to his neighbor, "Let us raise up the low condition of our people, and let us fight for our people and our sanctuary." And the assembly was gathered that they might be ready for battle, and that they might pray and ask mercy and compassion. Now Jerusalem was not inhabited, but was like a desert. There was none of her children that went in or out, and the sanctuary was trodden down, and the children of strangers were in the castle, and there was the habitation of the Gentiles, and the joy was taken away from Jacob, and the pipe and the harp ceased there. And they assembled together, and they came to Maspha over against Jerusalem, for in Maspha was a place of prayer heretofore in Israel. And they fasted that day, and put on haircloth, and put on their ashes on their head, and they rent their garments. And they laid open the books of the law, in which the Gentiles searched for the likeness of their idols. And they brought the priestly ornaments, and the first fruits, and the tithes, and they stirred up the Nazarites that had fulfilled their days. And they cried with a loud voice towards heaven, saying, "What shall we do with these? And whither shall we carry them? For thy holies are trodden down, and are profaned, and thy priests are in mourning, and are brought low. And behold, the nations are come together against us to destroy us. Thou knowest what they intend against us. How shall we be able to stand before their face, unless thou, O God, help us?" Then they sounded with trumpets, and cried out with a loud voice. And after this Judas appointed captains over the people, over the thousands, and over hundreds, and over 50s, and over 10s. And he said to them that were building houses, or had betrothed wives, or were planting vineyards, or were fearful, that they should return every man to his house according to the law. So they removed the camp and pitched on the south side of Emmaus. And Judas said, "Gird yourselves and be valiant men, and be ready against the morning, that you may fight with these nations that are assembled against us to destroy us and our sanctuary. For it is better for us to die in battle than to see the evils of our nation and of the holies. Nevertheless, it shall be the will of God in heaven, so be it done." the first book of Machabees, chapter 4. Sorry, friends, the rig is not the most secure here. Let me put this back up. And what just happened? See if I can get this. Then Gorgeous took 5,000 men and 1,000 of the best horsemen, and they removed out of the camp by night, that they might come upon the camp of the Jews and strike them suddenly. And the men that were of the castle were their guides. And Judas heard of it, and he rose up, he and the valiant men, to attack the king's forces that were in Emmaus. For as yet the army was dispersed from the camp. And Gorgeous came by night into the camp of Judas, and found no man. And he sought them in the mountains, for he had said, These men flee from us. And when it was day, Judas shewed himself in the plain with 3,000 men only, who had neither armor nor swords. And they saw the camp of the Gentiles, that it was strong, and the men in breastplates, and the horsemen round about them, and these were trained up to war. And Judas said to the men that were with him, Fear ye not their multitude, neither be ye afraid of their assault. Remember in what manner our fathers were saved in the Red Sea, when Pharaoh pursued them with a great army. So now let us cry to heaven, and the Lord will have mercy on us, and will remember the covenant of our fathers, and will destroy this army before our face this day. And all nations shall know that there is one that redeemeth and delivereth Israel. And the strangers lifted up their eyes, and they saw them coming against them. And they went out of the camp to battle, and they that were with Judas sounded the trumpet. And they joined battle, and the Gentiles were routed, and fled into the plain. But all the hindmost of them fell by the sword, and they pursued them as far as Gezern, even to the plain of Idumea, and Azotus, and of Jamnia, and there fell of them to the number 3,000 men. And Judas returned again with his army that followed him, and he said to the people, Be not greedy of the spoils, for there is war before us, and Gorgeous and his army are near us in the mountain. But stand ye now against our enemies, and overthrow them, and you shall take the spoils afterwards with safety. And as Judas was speaking these words, behold, part of them appeared, looking forth from the mountain. And Gorgeous saw that his men were put to flight, and that they had set fire to the camp, for the smoke that was seen declared what was done. And when they had seen this, they were seized with a great fear, seeing at the same time Judas and his army in the plain ready to fight. So they all fled away into the land of the strangers. And Judas returned to take the spoils of the camp. And they got much gold and silver and blue, silk and purple of the sea, and great riches. And returning home, they sung a hymn and blessed God in heaven, because he is good, because his mercy endureth forever. So Israel had a great deliverance that day. And such of the strangers as escaped went and told Lysaeus all that had happened. And when he had heard these things, he was amazed and discouraged, because things had not succeeded in Israel according to his mind, and as the king had commanded. So the year following, Lysaeus gathered together 70,000 chosen men and 5,000 horsemen, that he might subdue them. And they came into Judea, and they pitched their tents in Betharon, and Judas met them with 10,000 men. And they saw that the army was strong, and he prayed, and he said, Blessed art thou, O Savior of Israel, who didst break the violence of the mighty by the hand of thy servant David, and didst deliver up the camp of the strangers into the hands of Jonathan, the son of Saul, and of his armor-bearer. Shut up this army in the hands of thy people Israel, and let them be confounded in their host and their horsemen. Strike them with fear, and cause the boldness of their strength to languish, and let them quake at their own destruction. Cast them down with the sword of them that love thee, and let all know thy name. Praise thee with hymns. And they joined battle, and there fell of the army of Lysaeus 5,000 men. And when Lysaeus saw that his men were put to flight, and how bold the Jews were, and that they were ready either to live or to die manfully, he went to Antioch, and chose soldiers that they might come again into Judea with greater numbers. Then Judas and his brethren said, Behold, our armies are discomfited. Let us go now to cleanse the holy places and to repair them. And all the army assembled together, and they went up to Mount Zion, and they saw the sanctuary desolate, and the altar profaned, and the gates burned, and the shrubs growing up in the courts, as in a forest, or on the mountains, and the chambers joining to the temple thrown down. And they rent their garments, and they made great lamentations, and they put ashes on their head, and they fell face down to the ground on their faces. and they sounded with the trumpets of alarm, and they cried towards heaven. Then Judas appointed men to fight against them that were in the castle, till they had cleansed the holy places. And he chose priests without blemish, whose will was set upon the law of God. And they cleansed the holy places, and took away the stones that had been defiled in an unclean place. And he considered about the altar of the holocaust that had been profaned, what he should do with it. And a good counsel came into their minds, to pull it down, lest it should be a reproach to them, because the Gentiles had defiled it. So they threw it down. And they laid up the stones in the mountain of the temple in a covenant place, till there should come a prophet, and give answer concerning them. Then they took whole stones according to the law, and built a new altar according to the former. And they built up the holy places, and the things that were within the temple, and they sanctified the temple, and the courts. And they made new holy vessels, and brought in the candlestick, and the altar of incense, and the table into the temple. And they put incense upon the altar, and lighted up the lamps that were on the candlestick, and they gave light in the temple. And they set loaves upon the table, and hung up the veils, and finished all the works that they had begun to make. And they arose before morning on the 25th day of the 9th month, which is the month of Caslu, in the 148th year. And they offered sacrifice according to the law upon the new altar of holocaust which they had made, according to the time and according to the day wherein the heathens had defiled it, according to the day wherein the heathens had defiled it. In the same was it decided anew with canticles and harps and lutes and cymbals. And all the people fell upon their faces, and they adored and blessed up to heaven him that had prospered them. And they kept the dedication of the altar 8 days. Friends, this should sound familiar. We're currently in the feast of Hanukkah. They kept the dedication of the altar 8 days, and they offered holocausts with joy and sacrifices of salvation and praise. And they adorned the front of the temple with crowns of gold and escutcheons, and they renewed the gates and the chambers, and they hanged doors upon them. And there was exceeding great joy among the people, and the reproach of the Gentiles was turned away. And Judas and his brethren and all the church of Israel decreed that the day of the dedication of the altar should be kept in its season from year to year for 8 days, from the 25th day of the month of Caslu, with joy and gladness. They built up also that time Mount Zion with high walls and strong towers round about, lest the Gentiles should at any time come and tread it down as they did before. And he placed a garrison there to keep it, and he fortified it to secure Bethshura, that the people might have a defense against Idumea. Now, friends, we'll go to read. You may call it Sirach, or you may call it Ecclesiasticus. We're going to read that, chapter 38. Honor the physician for the need thou hast of him, for the Most High hath created him. For healing, all healing is from God, and he shall receive gifts of the king. The skill of the physician shall lift up his head, and in the sight of great men he shall be praised. The Most High hath created medicines out of the earth, and a wise man will not abhor them. Was not bitter water made sweet with wood? The virtue of these things is come to the knowledge of men. And the Most High hath given knowledge to men, that he may be honored in his wonders. By these he shall cure and shall allay their pains. And of these the apothecary shall make sweet confections, and shall make up ointments of health. And of his works there shall be no end. For the peace of God is over all the face of the earth. My son, in thy sickness neglect not thyself, but pray to the Lord, and he shall heal thee. Turn away from sin, and order thy hands aright, and cleanse thy heart from all offense. Give a sweet savor, and a memorial of fine flour, and make a fat offering, and then give place to the physician. For the Lord created him, and let him not depart from thee, for his works are necessary. For there is a time when thou must fall into their hands, and they shall beseech the Lord, that he would prosper what they give for ease and remedy, for their conversation. He that sinneth in the sight of his Maker shall fall into the hands of the physician. My son, shed tears over the dead, begin to lament as if thou hadst suffered some great harm, and according to judgment cover his body, and neglect not his burial. And for fear of being ill ill spoken of, weep bitterly for a day, and then comfort thyself in thy sadness, and make mourning for him according to his merit for a day or two, for fear of detraction. For of sadness cometh death, and it overwhelmeth the strength, and the sorrow of the heart boweth down the neck. In withdrawing aside sorrow remaineth, and the substance of the poor is according to his heart. Give not up thy heart to sadness, but drive it from thee, and remember the latter end. Forget it not, for there is no returning, and thou shalt do him no good, and shall hurt thyself. Remember my judgment, for thine also be so, yesterday for me, and today for thee. When the dead is at rest, let his remembrance rest, and comfort him in the departing of his spirit. The wisdom of a scribe cometh by his time of leisure, and he that is less in action shall receive wisdom. With what wisdom shall he be furnished that holdeth the plough, and he that glorieth in the goad, and that driveth oxen therewith, and is occupied in their labors, and his whole talk is about the offspring of bulls? He shall give his mind to turn up furrows, and his care is to give the kine fodder. So every craftsman and workmaster that laboureth night and day, he who maketh graven seals, and by his continual diligence varieth the figure, he shall give his mind to the resemblance of the picture, and by his watching shall finish the work. So does the smith sitting by the anvil and considering the ironwork. The vapour of the fire wasteth the flesh, and he fighteth with the heat of the furnace. The noise of the hammer is always in his ears, and his eye is upon the pattern of the vessel he maketh. He setteth his mind to finish his work, and his watching to polish them to perfection. So doth the potter, sitting at his work, turning the wheel about with his feet, who is always carefully set to his work, and maketh all his work by number. He fashioneth the clay with his arm, and boweth down his strength before his feet. He shall give his mind to finish the glazing, and his watching to make clean the furnace. All these trust to their hands, and every one is wise in his own art. Without these a city is not built, and they shall not dwell, nor walk about therein, and they shall not go up into the assembly. Upon the judge's seat they shall not sit, and the ordinances of judgment they shall not understand, neither shall they declare discipline and judgment, and they shall not be found where parables are spoken. But they shall strengthen the state of the world, and their prayer shall be in the work of their craft, applying their soul and searching in the law of the Most High. Now, friends, we will turn to, you may be calling it Revelations, or you may be calling it the Apocalypse of St. John the Apostle, chapter 9. And the fifth angel sounded the trumpet, and I saw a star fall from heaven upon the earth, and there was given to him the key of the bottomless pit. And he opened the bottomless pit, and the smoke of the pit arose as the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened with the smoke of the pit. And from the smoke of the pit there came out locusts upon the earth, and power was given to them as the scorpions of the earth have power. And it was commanded them that they should not hurt the grass of the earth, nor any green thing, nor any tree, but only the men who have not the sign of God on their foreheads. And it was given unto them that they should not kill them, but that they should torment them 5 months. And their torment was as the torment of a scorpion when he striketh a man. And in those days men shall seek death, and shall not find it, and they shall desire to die, and death shall fly from them. And the shapes of the locusts were like unto horses prepared unto battle, and on their heads were, as it were, crowns like gold, and their faces were as the faces of men, and they had hair as the hair of women, and their teeth were as of lions, and they had breastplates as of breastplates of iron, and the noise of their wings was as the noise of chariots and many horses running into battle. And they had tails like to scorpions, and there were stings in their tails, and their power was to hurt men 5 months, and they had over them a king, the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in Hebrew is Abaddon, and in Greek Apollyon, in Latin Exterminans. One woe is past, and behold, there were come yet 2 woes more hereafter. And the 6th angel sounded the trumpet, and I heard a voice from the 4 horns of the golden altar, which is before the eyes of God, saying to the 6th angel, who had the trumpet, loose the 4 angels who are bound up in the great river Euphrates. And the 4 angels were loosed, who were prepared for an hour, and a day, and a month, and a year, for to kill the third part of men. And the number of the army of the horsemen was 20,000 times 10,000. And I heard the number of them, and thus I saw the horses in the vision, and they that sat on them had breastplates of fire, and of hyacinth, and of brimstone, and the heads of the horses were the heads of lions, and from their mouths proceeded fire, and smoke, and brimstone. And by these 3 plagues was slain the third part of men, by the fire, and by the smoke, and by the brimstone, which issued from their mouths. For the power of the horses is in their mouths, and in their tails, for their tails are like to serpents, and have heads, and with them they hurt. And the rest of the men who were not slain by these plagues did not do penance from the works of their hands, that they should not adore devils, and the idols of gold, and silver, and brass, and stone, and wood, which neither can see, nor hear, nor walk. Neither did they penance from their murders, nor from their sorceries, nor from their fornication, nor from their thefts. The word of the Lord. Join us again a little later today. I'll have the readings that are actually for today, Monday, December 19th. May God bless you and keep you. May he make his face to shine onto you and be gracious to you. May the good Lord bless you in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen, friends.